Are you practicing daydreaming? Are you practicing being entertained? Are you, in other words, by a phone or something? Are you, whatever it is that you're practicing right now, you're probably getting pretty good at that. And so the question is, what is it? Because is it worthy of you? Like whatever it is that you're doing at this moment that you're practicing, is it worthy of you? My parents sacrificed a lot, way too much for me to be mediocre. And I wonder how many of us appreciate the sacrifices that our parents made, that we can sit there at any given moment and say, right now what I'm practicing is meaningful. It's worthy of me, and it's worthy of my parents' sacrifice. For what purpose? To become happy? Well, if you're productive, if you matter, if you're productive, if you're useful, if you make a difference, guess what will happen? You will become happy. This is how you lead to that. This is almost a paradoxical statement. The purpose of life isn't to be happy, it's to do the things that will make you happy and therefore become happy. We don't become happy when we blame others for our situations, because if we blame others for our situations, what that also means is when things go well, we have to give them the credit and not ourselves. There's nothing to be proud of. If we are in a bad situation because of others, then that suggests that when things turn around, that we're in a good situation because of others. There's never anything to be proud of. There's never anything to strive towards. There's never a reason to celebrate ourselves and our achievements. Now that we learn how to think and process the world, how can we maximize ourselves in it? Because our job is not to change the world. Our job is to change ourselves. After you've changed yourself, after you've maximized yourself, then we're in a place to say, you know what, the world's a little crazy right now. Maybe we can do some things to change it. But you're gonna find so often that the people who want to change the world are trying to change the world because they can't change themselves, or they refuse to change themselves. It's a narcissistic approach. I'm uncomfortable in the world, so let me try to change the whole world so that I can be comfortable in it. Not only is that an improper way of doing it, it's also an impossible way of doing it. And this is why you find people, largely who are activists out in the street all the time chanting, they're the most miserable people, and you can see it in their face and even the color of their hair is largely. Because they refuse to master themselves. They try to change the rest of the world around them. It goes along with that idea that you never step into the same river twice. As soon as you step into the river, either you have changed or the river's changed. You're experiencing it differently. And so as I begin my sentence right now, I'm a different person right now than I was when I began this sentence. And he went on to explain about how important this thing was to him and what it meant to him. I have absolutely no recollection of having said that. It sounds like something I would say, certainly. But in terms of, do I remember being in class and telling the class this? No. And if I'm sure I did, because he said I did. But I'm certain that when I said it, it was just a throwaway line. It was just something I was saying to get into something else. But he took something really important out of it. And the reason that that's so humbling is because I imagine that happens to a lot of us on a regular basis, and we don't even notice it. It's just like you don't even think much of it, because I might say something or you might say something, but it's not just what you say. It's how it hits a certain person at a certain time, and it's exactly what they needed to hear, or what they're hoping they wouldn't have to hear. And you have no idea. You walked away from it, and it could have been something that had a significant impact on someone's life, maybe even changed their life, hopefully for the better. But the reason it's so hard is because you also have to recognize if you can change someone's life for the better with something like that, you can also change someone's life for the worst. I think I've told you guys a story before that when I was in high school, I had a math teacher, Mr. Casasave, who was explaining to the class how white people can't do math. He was from Peru or something like that, and he was this little stuck guy. I always wore a jacket and a tie. I always wore a suit to work. And he would say, the white people cannot do mathematics. No, never learn how. He says, we invent mathematics. And I'm sitting there going like, is that true? Wondering, I thought the Arabians did it. And he says, I show you, Mr. Scanlon. I'm sorry, he didn't call me that. Sorry, he called me Gringo Scanlon. And he said, Gringo Scanlon, watch these. What is the answer to number 4? I got, shut up, you do not know. Okay, maybe he's right. And then the next year, I had a math teacher, Mr. Sickler, which is so weird. Sometimes I remember his name, sometimes I don't. And he was this tall guy with a beard, and he spoke very, very much like this. Or one day he walked up to the front of the class carrying some papers, and he just goes, "You're all basically retarded, and you're not going to learn math anyway." So, and he pulled out the papers, and he sat down on a stool, and he read us a story. He wrote stories, like fairy tales, castles, knights, kings, like that. I remember listening to him, thinking about my grade in his class, and said, he's probably right about me being basically retarded and incapable of learning mathematics. But damn, I like that story. I think maybe I should get more into stories. And so here I am. After my mom died, I was going through some papers, and I found these old aptitude tests that we used to take. You don't take them anymore, but essentially like 1st through 6th grade, every year you take a test, and then it would tell you what areas of school you were really good at and where you scored against the rest of the country. So for example, like you scored the top 10%, top 20%, top whatever. I found my old aptitude tests from when I was in 1st through 4th grade. And they indicated that I scored in the top 1% for science and mathematics. That's a trip. The bigger trip is that I scored in the bottom 20% for language, which means I shouldn't be teaching this. So how did that happen? Because I heard, the right thing. Well, I guess I heard the wrong thing at just the right time. That made me think, oh, maybe he's right. Maybe I can't do mathematics. But since I really liked stories, I started reading a lot more at that point. My mom was a reader. She was disabled when I was growing up, so she couldn't do much. So she read a lot. So because she read, I read. And so the point being, you can overcome a lot like that just with some kind of an interest. If nobody had ever told me I was really good at mathematics, I never would have known. And then I started studying it, trying to learn it on my own a few years ago. I'm like, wow, this is really easy stuff. Maybe I should have done mathematics. But I really like what I do. And the point is that you can overcome a lot of deficiency if there's something that you really, really like. If you find something that you really love, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the most talented at it, but if you work at it, you're probably going to get pretty good at it. You're going to get pretty good at anything that you practice, as long as you're practicing it properly. And there are better and worse ways to practice, of course. Just like you can walk, but there are better and worse ways to walk. I guess I would ask you that question then. At any given moment in your life, what is it that you're practicing? Like as you're sitting there on your desk right now, what is it that you're practicing? Are you practicing processing ideas? Are you practicing listening? Are you practicing trying really hard to listen to someone talk for an extended period of time when we're so used to in our world getting short snippets? It's difficult to go from that to listening to one person talk for a long period of time. Are you practicing daydreaming? Are you practicing being entertained? Are you, in other words, by a phone or something? Whatever it is that you're practicing right now, you're probably getting pretty good at that. And so the question is, what is it? Because is it worthy of you? Like whatever it is that you're doing at this moment that you're practicing, is it worthy of you? And I really mean that, because there's almost nothing that can be more humbling than to start to think about this. Like my parents sacrificed a lot, way too much for me to be mediocre. And I wonder how many of us appreciate the sacrifices that our parents made, that we can sit there at any given moment and say, right now what I'm practicing is meaningful. It's worthy of me, and it's worthy of my parents' sacrifice. And even if you don't like your parents, even if you never even knew them, the question is it worthy of what you could be though? And I know that that's a hard question to answer, because so many people just simply don't realize what it is that they could become. I know for a fact most of you don't realize what it is that you could become. Because if we knew, we would probably behave differently. For better or worse, I'll let you figure out if that's true, and what areas you would behave differently if you really believe these things. And I don't just mean like you say it. I mean like in your darkest of darkest, when you're at home and you're alone with your thoughts, do you really realize what it is that you could do? And it's always about that opportunity, because you have the ability to, but are you going to do something with it? It's like opportunity. You can have a lot of opportunity, Well, what is it that you're going to do with it? If I were to ask you, for example, this class, ERWC, this is the last time I'm going to talk to you this semester. This very well might be the last time I talk to a lot of you, because next semester, second semester schedules change. Some of you who are here right now probably won't be here next semester. You'll have some other teacher. There are people who are in other classes who will probably transfer in mid-year. We get a lot of students who drop out of the AP. Also because some of you have government or economics. It's like a one semester class, and whichever one it is, yeah. So sometimes your schedules change because of that. But if you were to go into your next English class, for example, and the teacher were to ask you, oh, you had Scan first semester. Yeah, what did you learn? I wonder what you'd say. I wonder how many people would just say, nothing. Nothing. I think that a good follow-up question to that would be, what could you have learned? That's the one that for me sticks me late at night. What could I have made of that opportunity? What could I have learned? What was available to me? And it's a hard question for a lot of us to answer, because we just simply don't know what we don't know. We don't know that there was opportunity available to us. We don't know what we could have picked up. Does anybody remember how we began this whole school year? Article? Fix yourself. Jordan Peterson. Look at yourself, examine yourself. Not that there's anything wrong with you, but look at yourself and figure out the ways that you can maximize yourself in the situation that you presently are in. Because we're all in situations largely that we can't control. When we can't control the situation, we're tasked with controlling ourselves and finding out how we can best operate in this world. How, I say, and why, for what purpose? To become happy? Well, if you're productive, if you matter, if you're productive, if you're useful, if you make a difference, guess what will happen? You will become happy. This is how you lead to that. This is almost a paradoxical statement. The purpose of life isn't to be happy, it's to do the things that will make you happy and therefore become happy. We don't become happy when we blame others for our situations, because if we blame others for our situations, what that also means is when things go well, we have to give them the credit and not ourselves. There's nothing to be proud of. If we are in a bad situation because of others, then that suggests that when things turn around, that we're in a good situation because of others. There's never anything to be proud of. There's never anything to strive towards. There's never a reason to celebrate ourselves and our achievements. After Fix Yourself, we went into the elements of reasoning. How do you think? What's the best way to think? How do intelligent, thoughtful people think? What's the processes of it? Right there on the wall. It's been there a whole year. That's the whole point of our annotations, to practice the thinking processes as we go through it, because just like walking, everybody walks. Just like running, everybody runs, except for my neighbors in a wheelchair. But everybody else runs. But there are better and worse ways to run. It's like anybody can swing a baseball bat, but it takes practice and proper practice to learn how to do it well, to learn how to walk well, to learn how to run well, to learn how to think well as you possibly can. So first things first, figure out your place in the world. Now figure out a way to learn how to think so that you can process the world, so that you can maximize yourself. After that, we looked at Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and we looked at the Enchiridion by Epictetus. The situation that you're in right now, how can you make the most of it again? Basically revisiting those first ideas. Now that we learn how to think and process the world, how can we maximize ourselves in it? Because our job is not to change the world. Our job is to change ourselves. After you've changed yourself, after you've maximized yourself, then we're in a place to say, you know what, the world's a little crazy right now. Maybe we can do some things to change it. But you're going to find so often that the people who want to change the world are trying to change the world because they can't change themselves, or they refuse to change themselves. It's a narcissistic approach. I'm uncomfortable in the world, so let me try to change the whole world so that I can be comfortable in it. Not only is that an improper way of doing it, it's also an impossible way of doing it. And this is why you find people, largely who are activists out in the street all the time chanting, they're the most miserable people, and you can see it in their face and even the color of their hair is largely. Because they refuse to master themselves. They try to change the rest of the world around them. After that, the very next question, the very next article, can people change? I don't know. Now that I know now I know that the process for making myself better is, to maximize my situation. I guess the question now is it possible? Can people change? Can I change? Can people around me change? Because obviously, once you discover some neat piece of information, a couple of you already pointed out, a great thing to do is to come back and say, how can I help other people now become better? Once you become better, how can you help other people become better? Some of you I know dream of becoming entrepreneurs and making a lot of money, not because you want to drive fast cars, but because you want to buy your mom a house. Because you want to help out your family, you want to help out your friends, you want to help out your community. And that's a neat motivation, and I hope it stays with you. I hope that you don't make your first million and go, when I make my next million, that's when I'll help my mom. Then you make your next million, and you're like, but I want to buy her a dope house. So let me wait till I make my next million, and we're always putting it off. I'm always going to help. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you, but we should want to come back and help other people. It's the only reasonable thing to do with our talents. That's the thing that suddenly makes life meaningful in a lot of ways, because we're of use, we're of value. Yes, to people we care about, but also just maybe even to strangers. That's the ultimate of it. You're helping and you're changing the lives of people who you'll never meet. And then after that, we looked at the dark psychology of social networks. Oh, the thing that's stopping us. One of the major barriers in our lives to becoming the things that we could become. And how is it that we can navigate that, to understand exactly what it really is doing to us? Because a lot of times, again, we don't know what we don't know. If we don't realize what that's doing to us and how it's stopping us, then I'll tell you this. The thing that really cut my use of social media in half, literally more than half, was discovering, or reading anyway, in interviews with Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, people who said that they don't let their own kids use social media. Once I read that, I was like, huh. And I looked more into it, I'm like, that's actually really true. And a lot of those tech executives say, oh, there's no way I let my kids on that stuff. Which tells you they design it to hook us, but they would never hook their own kids on. That did a real mind screw on me, man. But again, you don't know what you don't know. If we don't know that it's doing that to us, then of course we stay addicted to it. After that, we looked at the fragile generation, exactly how this lack of willingness to share ideas among ourselves leads us to become more fragile, less resilient in the world. Because if you're going to change yourself, if you're going to fix yourself, you're going to have to not be fragile. If you're going to learn how to think, which means examining yourself as well, you're going to have to know how to be resilient. If you're going to try to maximize your own place in the world, you're going to have to be resilient. If you're going to do any of the things that you want to do in life, probably, you're going to have to be resilient and not fragile. And then we finished up with a fairy tale, Selfish Giant, which I'll say more about next semester. Hopefully there's quite a message in there. And so, even if you're only with me this one semester, I hope I don't see you on Instagram at some point saying, we never learned anything useful in school. Maybe not, but you can never say the opportunity wasn't there. It was there all semester. And if we didn't, I guess I'm going to ask you the same question right now that I told you in the second week I was going to ask you at some point. The question being, what were you doing in the meantime? What meme did you look at that was more important than learning how to think? What TikTok did you watch that was more important than you learning how to maximize yourself? Hopefully what you say is, nothing, I was on it. But none of us are, man. And if you didn't, the good news is, there's always next semester. Unless something tragic happens. in which case this semester didn't matter anyway. But the problem with it is that we can keep putting it off and keep putting it off and keep putting it off. And it's too late. And so you've only got so much life, man. The earlier you get at it, the earlier you get at maximizing it, the better off you're going to be overall. I clearly don't tell you this because I think it's going to make me popular. I'm telling you this because it's true. Like everything else I've told you this semester, it's true. Even if I'm wrong about it, it's the best I can get to the truth. And then there may be nothing else that's more valuable in seeking after. Questions? Comments? Concerns? Complaints? Any criticisms? have any critiques? All right. This is it. Happy Thursday.